Welcome to another episode of A Brother with Questions. I am your host, B. Period. Man, I appreciate y'all joining me again. This will be another reaction video from me. This time I'm reacting to the gentleman you see on my left here. And he's talking about good old Florida again. They're always trying to come from my state. Man, I don't know how y'all be hating on the beautiful Florida, man. Telling you, I live here, love it, ain't going nowhere. But here he comes again, man. Before I start, please like, subscribe to the channel. That's the only way we grow. So we appreciate all of your likes, man. So to the video. Let's listen to what he got to say about Florida today.
Florida teachers are refusing to teach the new DeSantis curriculum, specifically the Ocoee Massacre of 1920, where over 30 black people lost their lives to prevent them from voting. According to the new curriculum, the teachers are supposed to say that the violence was perpetrated by African Americans. David Calhoun said, "We're going to teach the truth, and this standard is not the truth." Thank you, Mr. Calhoun, for teaching history as it happened.
All right. So I saw his video. Again, I'm from the state. Okay. So I know how much you guys in Florida, they love DeSantis, right? I say that in jest, of course. They love my state too, right? But apparently not so much. But you know, I think he's getting somewhat of a raw deal on this one. Okay, and here's, let's look at why. Let's look at why. Let's go back out and let's take a look at the actual standard that is in question. Okay, so in full transparency, I actually did a video about part of the standards that I personally disagreed with, which was the idea that blacks benefited from slavery being in as part of the curriculum, if you will. I disagreed with that, and I made a whole video about that. But on this one, you know, it smells a little funny to me on this one. So I went and actually found the standard. And so if you look right here on the screen, you're going to see the actual standard is describe the emergence, growth, destruction, and rebuilding of black communities during Reconstruction and beyond. My friends, that is the standard. I just want to go one more time. Describe the emergence, growth, destruction, and rebuilding of black communities during Reconstruction and beyond. There's your standard. So the statement in question, it actually comes in the benchmark clarifications. Because if you know it, I'm sure all my teachers know, standards are very broad, as this one is. They are extremely broad. And so a lot of times you read a standard and you go, man, what are they trying to get at here sometimes, right? And so the clarifications help provide some clarification on what they're trying to talk about. So you see in clarification 1, instruction includes the ramifications of prejudice, racism, and stereotyping on individual freedoms. Okay. They list some examples: civil rights cases, black codes, Jim Crow laws, lynching, the Columbian Exposition of 1893. I can't imagine you having a problem with that. And here comes the clarification that we do have a problem with, the one that this young man is referring to. Instruction includes acts of violence perpetrated against and by African Americans, but is not limited to the 1906 Atlanta race riot, the 1919 Washington, D.C. race riot, the 1920 Ocoee Massacre, the 1921 Tulsa Massacre, and the 1923 Rosewood Massacre. And our last clarification says instruction includes communities such as Lincolnville, Florida, Tallahassee, Oklahoma, and Eatonville, Florida. Okay? So in question, though, in his particular video, is the statement right here that reads, instruction includes acts of violence perpetrated against and by African Americans. So just some backstory. Because some of y'all ain't from Florida. So let's start here. Can I be honest with you? In Florida, number one, they haven't even started talking about the Ocoee massacre until pretty much right around George Floyd area. So we're talking 2020. That was really the first time in Florida you really started hearing about the Ocoee massacre. This is how bad it was. The city of Ocoee, around 2020, really started getting a push to acknowledge the Ocoee massacre of 1920. For me, myself, it's been a long time since I've been in anybody high school. Thank God. But when I was in school, nobody was talking about the Ocoee massacre. So the fact that the Ocoee massacre, number one, is included in the book at all is major progress, right? So that's number one. The fact that we even talking about it is major progress. Because 50 years ago, 30 years ago, they weren't talking about it. I'm sure if you lived there in Ocoee and obviously as a black person, you might have had some descendants. Of course, you were talking about it. But outside of that, nobody want to talk about this. So it's their progress, okay? The fact that they got the race riots in there and Rosewood and Tulsa. Again, I grew up here, high school here. I found out about Rosewood when I watched the movie. Okay? So the fact that we're even talking about these ideas, progress. So to the piece of the clarification in hand. Instruction includes acts of violence perpetrated against and by African Americans. So, number one, it acknowledges that violence was committed against African Americans. Okay? I'm not offended by the fact that it acknowledges that African Americans didn't sit around and once the violence started happening to them, African Americans, or black people as I like to say, retaliated and started responding against them. I'm not offended that they put that in there because it's true. When they start pulling guns, black people are like, wait a minute now, we got to fuel ourselves. There's nothing wrong with that. Now the nuance is, I know what y'all got a problem with, because y'all want to just talk about how bad these white people were who perpetrated all these acts. And to me, that's the nuance of your teacher, right? Because at the end of the day, what they're teaching is they're describing the emergence, growth, destruction, rebuilding of black communities during Reconstruction and beyond. That is their goal. At the end of all of this, whether they include Ocoee Massacre, whether they include the Washington, D.C. race riot, whether they include the Atlanta race riot, the goal is to understand the emergence, growth, destruction, and rebuilding of black communities during Reconstruction and beyond. Because that's the goal. Now, how you get to that goal, how you describe that goal, quite honestly, every teacher's going to do that a little bit different. Some are going to spend 3 weeks on the Ocoee Massacre. Some are going to spend 2 days. Some are going to mention Rosewood. Some just going to mention the Atlanta race riot and the Washington, D.C. race riot. Because their goal is describe the emergence, growth, deconstruction, and rebuilding of black communities during Reconstruction and beyond. So when I listen to his video, and he says that because of Ron DeSantis, we're teaching this wrong. No, we're not teaching this wrong. What's going to determine whether or not it's wrong is what that teacher says in that classroom. And until you get in her classroom or his classroom, you don't know what's going on. Because the standard doesn't say I have to talk about the Ocoee Massacre, I have to talk about Tulsa Massacre, I have to talk about Rosewood. No, The standard says I need to describe the emergence, growth, destruction, and rebuilding of Black communities. Now you hope that they will use some of those resources, some of these ideas, right? Some of these events. But if they teach the standard, they can mention one of those events, two of those events, three of those events. They're not going to get dinged because they didn't mention them all. They're going to get dinged for not teaching the standard. So when you say they're teaching it wrong, I have pushback on you. Because if they decide to teach the Ocoee Massacre and they use a article about the Ocoee Massacre, they use a book about the Ocoee Massacre, they showed the documentary about the Ocoee Massacre, the truth is going to get told in that story, right? Black man wanted to vote, some white people didn't like it, violence ensued. White people started it, Black people retaliated. That's the story. All because somebody wanted to vote. So you say they're teaching it wrong. I disagree with you. I challenge you to tell me how you're teaching it wrong if that's the story you tell. Because no matter the standard says, describe the emergence, growth, deconstruction, rebuilding of Black communities during the Reconstruction and beyond. So if you show how there was a massacre in Ocoee, started because a Black man was trying to vote, some white people didn't like it. But the Black community in Ocoee was able to rebuild and eventually get themselves to voting. You just done the standard. You don't have to put emotion in that. I know that's what y'all want. Y'all want the emotions. Y'all want the kids in that classroom to feel everything that those people might have been feeling at the time. I get that. But I don't like when you twist the truth to prove a point. Just tell the truth. Say that you want the emotions of what those people were feeling to be taught in the classroom. I disagree with you. I think that's part of the problem. We got too many people with emotions in the classroom. School is not a place for you to pour out your heart on your students. School is a place, in my opinion, for you to teach what they need to know to make them successful once they get out of high school and beyond. And you can teach that standard. You can mention all those massacres. And you should. I have no problem with you mentioning them. I'm not here to tell you not to. But to say the standard is wrong because it acknowledges that Black people just didn't sit around and get themselves shot and killed and wait for somebody to come save them. We didn't. They retaliated. They perpetrated violence too in retaliation. And a good teacher is going to say that, and it's not going to be lying, and it's not going to be going against the standard. Because that's the truth. So please, come up with some better arguments, people. I get it. Y'all don't like DeSantis, and I'm cool with that. But if you don't like him, you don't have to come here. You don't have to go with this. You can do better than this. There's a whole bunch of other stuff he's done that you can disagree with. But this, you got to do better, bro. Got to do better. And with that, I'm out, man. I'm your guy, B Period, man. Please like and subscribe to the channel. As always, I am your guy, B Period, and I am out.